Chapter 22. They needed to go deeper. Deeper, said Bobbie. I feel like we've been digging for ages. Just as she'd never had an opportunity to consider whenever she was afraid of heights, Bobbie had rarely had occasion to wonder if she might be claustrophobic. She's done a little digging for coal in the past, and she felt no great sense of unease when they had walked underground rail walked the underground rail tunnel or camped out in Ben's burrow on the edge of the swamp. But this was different. There were blocks upon blocks of dirt hanging suspended over her head, obstructing her access to free and open air. Bobbie tried not to think about it, but that proved as hard as resolving not to look at an Enderman. Her mind kept drifting back to cramped, suffocating thoughts. Ben kept digging. Deeper is better, he said. Technically, you can find gold almost anywhere, but it's more common a bit farther down than this. Ben cut a narrow, descending passage through the subterranean stone like a steep and artless staircase. At his direction, Bobbie placed torches along the path, and she picked up stray bits of coal that came loose as he dug. We make a good team, she said brightly. Sure, he said, huffing. That's what the person with the easy job always says. Oops, I just dropped Johnny's lead, Bobbie said. What? Ben said, and he whirled around, gripping his pickaxe like a sword. Just kidding, Bobbie said brightly, but let me know if you want to trade jobs at any point. Ben gave her a dirty look. I'll stick to digging, thanks. Eventually, Ben hacked his way through to a cave. The narrow, descending passage opened up into an underground space about the size of Bobbie's home, but with craggy, irregular edges and a single passageway that led off into pitch darkness. Bobbie was quick to place torches all around. Careful with those, Ben said. We're in trouble if we run out. I've got wood and coal, Bobbie replied. I can make more if we need them. Which which way from here? Well, that's the beauty, said Ben. There's no wrong answer. It kind of sounds like there's no right answer. There's no guarantee. That's why that's why it's an adventure. He hefted his pickaxe. Start digging and see what you find. Bobbie dug as directed. She didn't find much of anything, though andesite, diorite, granite. Soon her inventory was full of various types of stone. Just dump that stuff anywhere, Ben told her. What? You mean litter? Bobbie shook her head. I'm not really comfortable with that. It isn't littering, Ben insisted. You just putting it back. He sighed. You can arrange it awfully if that makes you feel better. Bobbie began stacking her excess stone in little columns while Johnny tugged lightly on his lead. Growling with boredom. Ben was clearly distracted and unnerved by the noise. Growling is usually my first sign that danger's coming, he said. So he's sort of throwing me off. Do you have any more bones for him to gnaw on? Bobbie asked. You're spoiling him, Ben said, and he stomped over to a dark corner of the cavern. He planted a fence post into the ground, then stomped back over to take Johnny's lead. Careful, Bobbie said. I know, said Ben, and he affixed the lead to the post. You'll be fine over there and over here. Ben crossed to the opposite side of Bobbie and placed a small chest beneath one of the torches. He picked up the chest in Serenaton, promising it would come in handy eventually. We can keep everything. We can keep anything we're not actively using inside this chest. That way, we're not littering, and we'll have plenty of room in our inventory for anything exciting we might find. Makes sense, said Bobbie. She opened the chest and filled it with stone, coal, wood, and emeralds. She held on to the witch's journal, the she-cell, and the strange idol she'd taken from the evoker, plus her iron sword and pickaxe, both of which were beginning to show signs of wear. She got back to digging immediately. After that, more stone, more coal, and then a golden glint shone through a slab of gray. I think I found some gold, Bobbie said excitedly. Ben peered over her shoulder. No, sorry, he said. That's iron. Bobbie groaned. It's super useful, he said. Our tools won't last forever, so you want to grab as much iron as you can find. If you say so, said Bobbie. She tried not to feel so discouraged, but this was already taking longer than she hoped. It was difficult, monotonous work, and the case was eerie. Even after the haunted house, that space, at least, appeared habitable, meant for people, with chandeliers and bookshelves and chairs. On the ground, she felt like an intruder in a landscape that was not meant for her, a cold, alien place that did not care for her comfort. The silence, in particular, unnerved her. The silence. Why was it so silent all of a sudden? Bobbie poked out of the little hole she'd been digging. She looked over to where Ben had tied Johnny up. The fence post was right there where she remembered it, but her brother was nowhere to be seen. Johnny's missing, she cried. Say what? Said Ben, who popped out of his own hole. He saw the empty fence post. Oh no, he said, and he looked wildly in every direction. He could be anywhere. He could attack us at any moment. Bobbie huffed. More important, my brother could be lost underground forever. All right, Ben said sheepishly. Yeah, that would also be bad. Chapter 23. Look on the bright side, Ben said to her as he ran. As a zombie, your brother is probably safe from monsters. Remember the Enderman? It didn't seem to notice him watching it. That's something, I guess, said Bobbie. Yeah, said Ben. The real concern is environmental hazards. He could end up in lava, for instance, or fall into a chasm, or climb out into the sun, or oh, this would be bad. What if another adventurer finds him? Ben, stop trying to make me feel better, said Bobbie. Please. They were rushing down a naturally formed tunnel of stone. The irregular floor meant that they either had to hop down or jump up every few steps, and Bobbie was having a hard time watching her footing while also checking for side paths and placing torches every dozen blocks or so. We're running out. We're running low on torches, she warned. I told you, Ben said Ben unhealthily. The luck ran out as she feared it would. The single linear path came to a T intersection, splitting off in two directions. Which way? Said Bobbie. How should I know? Said Ben. Which direction does your brother like more, right or left? That's not a thing, said Bobbie. and then she shouted, "Johnny! Johnny! Where are you?" Silence followed her question. Silence, and then a low, trembling growl. The echo made it difficult to know which way it had come from. "This way," said Ben, and he turned to the right. "I heard him. I see him." Ben approached a shambling figure in the dim light. It had its back turned to them as it shuffled aimlessly up the tunnel. "Ben, stop!" Bobbie shouted. "That isn't Johnny." Ben reeled back as a figure turned to face him. It was not a zombie. It was a zombie, but it was not the zombie he was looking for. Bobbie hurried past him, and with a swing of her sword, she knocked the ghoul momentarily back. But it has its focus on her now, and it kept coming. Ben came at it from behind, slashing it with his sword and regaining its attention. Bobbie stepped back and watched as he timed his swings expertly, avoiding the zombie's lunges as he hacked it away. After only a few hits, the zombie crumbled to dust. "That looked nothing like Johnny," she said. "Are you kidding me?" said Ben. "You can tell zombies apart now?" "That thing was almost twice as tall as my brother," she said, "and he didn't have a lead. And his nose was totally different." "Should I go on?" "Please do," said Ben. "But can you lecture me while we run?" They continued along the current path, but soon came to a dead end in the form of an uneven wall of dirt. "Slime balls," said Bobbie, and Ben tutted. "I think I'm a bad influence on you," he said. "Come on, this way. Don't worry, we'll find him." They turned around, retracing those steps to the T intersection and taking the other path. "I only have 3 torches left," warned Bobbie, "and I left behind nearly all the coal we found." Ben cursed under his breath. "Okay, I'm going to backtrack and grab some of the torches off the wall. Back the way we came from." "We can't turn back yet," said Bobbie. "We're not, I promise," he said, "but we need light down here. I'm just going to retrace our steps for 1 minute. But the longer we argue, the farther away he gets," he said over his shoulder, already retreating. "Stay there. I'll be right back before you know it." Ben turned the corner, and Bobbie was suddenly alone. The silence, the darkness, the stone above her head, and the worry in her heart, it all pressed in on her. She tried not to peer into the darkness ahead of her and wonder what might be just beyond her vision. Well, Johnny, for one. He was ahead of her somewhere. She took a step. She took a step forward. She still had 3 torches. After all, she could make some progress. While she waited for Ben to return. She waited as long as she could before placing the next torch, towing the very edge of darkness, determined to make the most of her suddenly limited resource. She should have been spacing them out farther along all along, but she never would have thought she went out of them so quickly. Funny how easy it was to take what you had granted. As she edged forward, she heard a strange sound ahead. It was a sort of clacking, like dry rocks in a sack, knocking into one another, and then something flew toward her. If she hadn't been peering forward, she would never have seen it in time. As it was, she just barely had time to dodge it. She turned around to see what it was, an arrow stuck in the rock wall just behind her. Something had shot at her. She whirled back around and saw a skeleton emerging from the darkness. This time, she had her sword ready. She had watched Ben fight the zombie, timing his attacks perfectly so that he hit the zombie each time it lunged within reach. She had used a similar technique against the creeper, and she could do the same thing against the skeleton, except the skeleton wasn't coming any closer. It took aim with its bow and fired. This time, Bobbie didn't dodge quickly enough, and the arrow sliced across her arm. It hurt. "Get over here and fight me!" she bellowed, brandishing her sword. It took aim. Another arrow already notched in its bow. Bobbie realized she needed a different strategy. If the skeleton wouldn't come to her, well, Bobbie went forward, sword raised, and she screamed, a ragged war cry. The skeleton fired its arrow, injuring her again, but she didn't let it stop her. A second later, she was upon the skeleton, striking it again and again in a wild flurry of furious blows. It shattered to pieces, leaving behind only a single intact bone and two arrows. Bobbie turned at the sound of footsteps and saw Ben approaching from behind her from behind. "Ben!" she said. "I just beat my first skeleton." Ben's eyes went wide, and he broke out into a run, headed right for her. "You missed one," he said. "What?" Before Bobbie could process his words, Ben had tackled her, dragging her down to the stony ground. She was ready to complain, but then an arrow whizzed by overhead. "Oh," she said, and turning toward the dark end of the tunnel, she saw another skeleton, bow raised and ready. It was joined by a second and a third. "That's a lot of skeletons," she said bleakly. "What should we do?" "Try not to die," Ben answered, and he surged forward down the tunnel, sword flashing as he closed the distance to the nearest mob. Bobbie followed his example, reasoning that it was better to be in striking range than to hang back and draw fire. As she advanced, she saw a strange object just past the skeletons. It looked like a small metal cage. A tiny flame burned within it. "I'll handle the skeletons," Ben told her between shrieks. "You destroy that spawner with your pickaxe." "Spawner?" echoed Bobbie. "The cage thing?" "The cage thing. If we don't destroy it, it's going to keep making more skeletons until we're completely overwhelmed." Bobbie didn't like the sound of that. She hurried past the skeletons. The eerie was directed entirely at Ben for the moment, and she brought her pickaxe down on the spawner. It broke after just a few blows. She intended to warp back around, then to run to Ben's aid, but she saw another figure up ahead, one she thought she recognized. Once she had placed the torch down, casting a spear of light that pushed back at the darkness, she was certain. "Johnny!" she cried. Her brother had wandered up to the very edge of a rushing subterranean river, and at the sound of her voice, did he recognize his name? Johnny turned to look at her, but he turned too quickly. He lost his footing. Bobbie watched in horror as her brother fell into the raging river and was immediately swept away in its current. But she only watched for a second, and then she ran forward as fast as she could and dove headfirst into the water. Chapter 24. Bobbie fought to keep her head above water. It was a losing battle. The current was so strong, and the river took a tortoise path through the pitch-dark underground. How could Bobbie hope to find the surface when she couldn't even tell which way was up? And how could she find Johnny in all this chaos? After a little time, even as the river continued to rage, the darkness began to lighten. An eerie orange glow filled the cavern. She only hoped it wasn't daylight. There would be no protecting her brother from that. And then suddenly, just as Bobbie was beginning to wonder whenever she'd be swept out to sea, the current calmed and the narrow river widened into a tranquil underground lake. In the eerie orange light, Bobbie was able to see Johnny nearby, struggling to swim. The poor thing was actually trying to bite the water, as if he could fight it off or infect it, turning it to his side. She grabbed him from behind, careful to avoid his teeth and claws, and dragged him to shore. Gripping his lead, Bobbie collapsed onto the dry stone, and Johnny did the same. Bad baby, she said, breathless, although part of her took some comfort in knowing that Johnny still had a tendency to wander off. It was another reminder that the Johnny she knew was still in there, somewhere. Bobbie remained splayed out on the ground, allowing herself a moment to catch her breath. As she lay there, a voice rose over the sound of the water. Ow, it said. Slime balls. Bobbie popped up from her prone position to see Ben swimming in their direction. Bobbie extended a hand, and he took it as he clambered onto shore. That was awful, he said, wheezing for breath. You followed us, said Bobbie. Well, sure, said Ben. I've done more idiotic things for less of a payday. He plopped down on the ground. Not much more idiotic, though. Right, said Bobbie. She kept forgetting why Ben was really there. She gazed back at the river, and she saw now the source of the cavern's strange orange glow. It was lava, a whole cistern of it, roiling and bubbling mere steps away. The sight took her breath away. Ben lifted his head to follow her gaze. You look like you've never seen lava before. I haven't, she said. Only in books. It's beautiful. From a distance, I guess. But don't touch it, said Ben, and then he turned to Johnny. That goes double for you, you nocturnal numbskull. Johnny opened his mouth to growl, and a mouthful of river water poured out. That black wall, Bobbie said. That the one that's separating the water from the lava. Is that obsidian? Yeah, useful stuff because it blocks lava and explosions, answered Ben. It forms sometimes where water and lava come into contact. I'd say we should mine it, but our pottery iron pickaxes won't do the job. He pulled himself to his feet. It can also be a little tricky, mining so close to lava. I once set my boots on fire and had to jump in a lake. Bobbie, who'd been creeping closer to the edge, took a big step back. Ben chuckled. The good news is that the light will keep new monsters from spawning. No torches required. He rolled his shoulders. We should rest. Maybe eat something. I don't know about you, but I took a couple of arrows back there. While Bobbie started a campfire with a last piece of coal, Ben set out the beds and then he ringed them with cobblestone. It only took a few minutes before they had an open roofed structure with simple openings to serve as a door and windows. Bobbie blinked furiously at the sight. You just built a whole house in the time it took me to shake the water out of my boot gloves? Well, sure, it's pretty basic, Ben said, as if it really were no big deal. And I had all that stone in my inventory, so why not? You sure would have been handy around Plaintown, Bobbie said. It was all I could do to keep our fences in shape. Speaking of fences, Ben said, as he planted a wooden post in the ground outside the structure, is that for Johnny? Forget it, she said. I'm not letting him out of my sight again. We can put his post inside, please. But Ben looked back at the structure and he sighed. Fine, but I'll have to take down a wall and make the place bigger. I don't want the infant industries looking over my bed while I'm asleep. After another minute, Ben was satisfied that the interior was large enough to share with Johnny. Bobby tied his lead to the post, which was in one corner of the structure, while Ben pulled out some food he'd been saving for a rainy day. He was getting tired of melon slices. By the way, I'm sorry he got away, he said, setting a pork chop over the fire. He turned to look at Bobby. I must not have secured the lead well enough, but I promise it was an accident. I know, Bobby said. I don't blame you, but the whole thing makes me nervous. The longer it takes us to kill him, the better the chance something bad will happen to Johnny. Something bad, echoed Ben. He smirked. Like something worse than turning into a mindless zombie? He isn't mindless, Bobby said. She turned to look at her brother, and she saw that he was staring blankly at the wall and drooling a little. And anyways, yes, there are worse things than being a zombie. Her voice got softer. At least there's a cure for it. There's a lot of bad stuff that can't be fixed. Yeah, fair enough, said Ben. He looked up. Over the walls of the little fort, the light from the lava lit up a vast, hollow space overhead. We'll find some gold tomorrow, I'm sure of it. They ate in silence after that, illuminated by the glow of the lava and the fading campfire, each thinking about what tomorrow might bring. Johnny ate his pork chop raw.